It's been a year since you took over as CEO here at Crate & Barrel. You've made a number of changes. What did you want to bring to the store? What did you think it needed to do?
Well, I think all retailers at the moment, especially one like ours that's got a 56-year-old heritage, have to transform for the digital era. We know that our customers increasingly interact with us across different channels and across social media, etc. And so one of the things that I have really driven as an agenda is ensuring that our brand is delivered consistently, whether it's on Instagram or through Pinterest or through digital services such as Modsy, which offers online design services, and 3D visualization. So our customers are changing, we need to change, and so technology's been a big driver since I've been here.
And social media, it sounds like you've embraced it.
Yes, very much so, because we know that home is a category that customers love. There's more interest than ever in design and interior design, and our customers everyone's an amateur designer these days, and that's great. We can embrace that for the new era. And then the other thing I would say is really leveraging our stores. So we have introduced something called the Crate Design Studio in the background here today. And that's really our very expert associates helping customers redesign their rooms in a very kind of concierge and added value service. They'll come to your home, they'll help you customize your furniture. All of that is really important, I believe, for the future of our stores and our offer.
So let's stick for a moment with your consumer moving online. You try and reach them online in terms of advertising, and then how are you serving them online? Has your e-commerce business grown in the same way as your advertising business has?
It has. So over 50% of our advertising these days is online, which is a shift from even just 2 years ago. But also our e-commerce sales are 47%, which typically surprises people, but is actually not bad.
You wouldn't expect that for large goods like furniture.
Exactly. And it shows just how comfortable customers have become. Now, typically that tends to be higher with established brands that they trust. They know Crate & Barrel, they trust us for our quality. But 47% is a high growth number.
And are you expecting it to go higher?
I am. I don't really know where it will top out, maybe 50, maybe 60%. I expect it won't go higher than that because there will always be a customer who either has a convenience purchase they're making in the store or somebody who really wants something today. But it's certainly high.
How has that affected shipping? Because that's a big cost, obviously, for retailers once they start having to serve customers by delivering goods to them. And a lot of customers now expect free delivery.
Yes, well, we offer a very fast and competitive shipping service, and we find that many of our customers really appreciate the quality of our shipping offer. The economics of it, which I think was your question, haven't really impacted us as much as others because we have always had that network in place. Because if you think about furniture in this store, there's very little of it that you could take home with you today. So we've always had that shipping network. We haven't had to build it.
So you leverage one of the benefits of being a traditional retailer.
Yes.
And moving there, you were talking about stores. How has this impacted your store strategy? You obviously have over 100 stores, I believe, Crate & Barrel and CB2. You still want to get people through the door. What are you doing specifically to make sure people are still coming into your stores?
Yes, it's almost become a cliche in retail that we talk about experiential retail, but I really do believe in that you know, customers come here and they increasingly expect theatre, they expect great customer interactions. Just a couple of examples would be we hold more in-store events than ever before. So if you, we have a very strong positioning diff registry. We're the number 3 player and the number 1 specialty retailer. And in most of our stores across the country, we hold these wonderful bridal events where people can come, they can meet the local florist, the local baker, they can, you know, design their wedding event from a sort of very 360 perspective. Those are the sorts of events. But if you take our other brand, CB2, which is growing hugely and is much more of a millennial urban brand, they also...
What kind of growth are you seeing there?
Mid-20s. And we're also opening stores in that brand because it's 70% online. So we still see an opportunity to open stores where it's relevant. But that brand has very much focused on store events. The one in Soho had a Goop event, for example, our latest collaboration with Gwyneth Paltrow on Sunday morning, and there were more than 50 people at 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday in our Soho store.
And how have collaborations helped you? You mentioned Gwyneth Paltrow, you also have a collaboration with Reese Witherspoon and her Draper James. Is that a big driver of customer interaction with Crate & Barrel?
It is recently. I mean, it's something we've been doing over the last couple of years. What we find with those collaborations is they create a point of interest with our customers. They also help us to use our design skills for unique product with a celebrity or with somebody who's an influencer in the marketplace. And it creates a buzz around our brand, a different conversation, and obviously a limited edition set of products.
And it feeds back obviously into advertising then for you.
Absolutely,
as well.
Social media in particular. I think since we launched the collaboration with Reese Witherspoon back in November, we've had over 1 billion media impressions.
That's quite a lot.
Yes.
You mentioned a little bit about leveraging technology as well. How is data, AI, those sorts of areas of the business, how are they helping you make business decisions when it comes to Crate & Barrel?
Yeah, good question. And it's I think that's probably the most exciting part of our business right now. It sounds a bit geeky, but the reality is we are able to leverage customer data in a way that we just were never able to do so before. So one of the things we talk a lot about is one customer view, being able to really map all the different interactions we have with customers and offer them a highly personalized experience, whether it's online or by email. And I think customers increasingly expect that from us, or including in our design studio. You know, when someone comes for an in-house consultation, our design expert can see, you know, what are their tastes, what have they bought before, what is their browsing behavior. That is hugely important in us offering the kind of absolute pinnacle of customer service.
And does this differentiate you from the competition? Because the competitive landscape for Crate & Barrel has changed somewhat. You obviously have the likes of Williams-Sonoma, Pier 1, but now there's also Amazon Home, Wayfair, Walmart and Target have big home departments, and they're also increasing their e-commerce offerings. How do you, or how does Crate & Barrel fit into that landscape?
Well, we focus, I mean, all competition I think is a good thing, and the home industry is growing really well, and I think that customers increasingly have choices. They mix and match their products and their rooms. But what we find, and we've had very healthy growth over the last couple of years.
What kind of growth?
We don't publish our growth figures, but I can say to you they're kind of in the mid to high single digits. Last year was 8%. So, you know, we're happy with that level of growth. And what we're seeing is that customers come to us because they expect a certain level of service, they expect a certain level of personalization. For example, we're seeing custom furniture where grow to be more than half of the sofas that we sell, whereas a few years ago that was maybe in the 20s. So
that's a customer shift you're seeing there.
Yeah, it's a customer shift.
And you think you do this better than the competition?
I feel that we do because, you know, we've been sourcing upholstery from North Carolina for over 30 years. And so we just have a very established supplier base, we have a very established quality message, and we design very unique products.
So you can capture the personalization trend that is happening across retail.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the US consumer. We hear a lot from the president about how well the economy is doing. We're certainly seeing strong growth here in the US. That's also meant wages are starting to go up. It's also meant that unemployment has fallen to a record low. So how does that impact your business? A, from the perspective of the customer, are they willing to spend more? And B, does it make it a little bit more difficult for you to hire and retain associates here at Crate & Barrel?
Yeah, so let me take the first part. I mean, clearly the confidence is at the highest level we've seen for many years, and we do see that translate in our customer demand and growth, and that's a very positive trend for us. What's interesting though is we're seeing more customers than ever rent rather than buy. So about 37% of Americans now rent, which surprised me at least when I came to the market. So that does mean we are also seeing a trend into urban spaces, smaller spaces, and people have, again, different customer needs as a result of that. But it's a positive thing for Crate & Barrel because we tend to be located in the places that many people are migrating to.
But does that mean people want a different kind of product if they're renting?
Sometimes, and so we have really focused recently on small spaces and how you can customize your product. Most of our products come, they'll fit in a large suburban home, but they'll also fit in a 2-bedroom apartment here in Manhattan. So we have the flexibility to offer customers what they need. The second part of your question around associates, yes, we do see it becoming more competitive to recruit associates. We're lucky that we as a brand have strong values and have had longevity in our store base. Over 7 years is our average tenure, which is unusual for retail, and I think that's because thankfully my associates are extremely committed to the Crate & Barrel brand and the experience of working here.
Do you find that you are going to have to raise wages now that the labour market is that much tighter?
We have done selectively in certain markets. I mean, at the moment that trend seems to be city by city, location by location, and where relevant, of course, we will remain competitive.
Where have you had to raise wages?
I couldn't tell you the exact cities, but Seattle obviously being one of them. I mean, a lot of them tend to be in California, where the minimum wage legislation has moved faster. But selectively, I mean, we're starting to see Texas rise in terms of growth rates. So it's not always the places that you would expect.
The president has just announced another round of tariffs on Chinese goods, 10% tariffs on another $200 billion. It includes furniture. This must be something that is of a concern to Crate & Barrel.
It is. And firstly, what I would say is I'm incredibly proud of Crate & Barrel's history in this. I mean, we source from 100 artisans across 42 countries, and we have an incredible tradition of, finding people who produce very unique products in, sometimes in remote villages in Kerala. And somehow the discussion has gone to the idea that everything that's produced in some of these markets is mass produced or industrialized. That simply isn't true. And so it is a shame and it is a disappointment to us that furniture was included in the list. However, we will continue to work with our vendors on how we mitigate that for customers. We'll also, we're very lucky in that we have a very diversified global supplier base. About 20% of our goods come from China, but 20% come from India, 10% from Vietnam. So
will you have to shift where you source from?
At this stage, we don't anticipate that. Should the second round go into effect, then obviously that will become something we'll think about. But what's interesting about that discussion is it won't shift back to the US necessarily. I mean, other than upholstery, where we have a great manufacturing base in the US, some of those products would be very difficult to manufacture domestically. So in reality, it'll move to another Asian market or potentially Europe.
You might have to shift your supply chains or look at different sourcing for products. How will it affect the Crate & Barrel customer back here? Do you envisage having to raise prices?
Not at this stage. We've looked at it quite carefully because we've had a month or two to do so. I hope not, and at this stage I don't anticipate that we will. It does really depend on the 25% that's threatened to come into effect in January and how that plays out in the marketplace. But at this stage, I expect us to be able to either work with our vendors or consider alternative sources.
Is the uncertainty something that is actually more of a concern than the tariffs themselves?
Yes, and I mean, international sourcing is difficult. To do what I just described, something, okay, we've been doing it for more than 50 years, but the reality is it's difficult to ensure that you're doing it ethically, that you're doing it sustainably, that you're working with factories where you have real partnership, and just any kind of disruption and shift in that creates a huge amount of work that needs to go into creating those relationships and vetting those factories and developing those products together. So it's not, in our case, as simple as moving manufacturing from one manufacturing base to another manufacturing base. So I'm not a publicly traded company, so I don't necessarily have the same uncertainty in terms of managing the market. But certainly it creates a lot of work and disruption in our internal organization.
Are you surprised that this has been precipitated by the business president?
I can't really comment on that. I mean, I understand what the agenda is. I don't know whether this will be successful in achieving it, but it seems to have a much wider spread impact than I would have expected.